Good evening, and welcome to On the Frontline Congressional Recess Training. My name is Tiffany Flowers, and I'm the campaign manager for the Frontline. We're so glad that you're here with us tonight. Truly, thank you for joining, and we'll be getting started in just a minute. First, I'd like to turn it over to my friend Neidi Dominguez from Unemployed Workers United, who will talk about the Spanish interpretation. Neidi? Neidi, I'm going to ask you to do that again because we couldn't hear you. You were on mute. I think you're still muted. I can't hear you, Neidi.
Buenas noches.
There we go.
Ok. Buenas noches a todas. Bienvenidos al encuentro virtual de Frontline. Hay interpretación en español. Si desea escuchar la interpretación en español, por favor seleccione el icono de globo en la computadora o donde dice More, o tal vez sean 3 puntitos que están en su tableta o teléfono inteligente. Seleccione interpretación de idiomas y después seleccione español del menú que aparece. Esperemos que todo esté bien.
Thank you so much, Neidi. Spanish interpretation is provided on this call. If you wish to hear the Spanish interpretation, please select the globe icon on your computer or the more or 3 dots icon on your tablets or smartphone. Select language interpretation and choose Spanish in the pop-up. Tonight's training is the first in a series of frontline trainings to prepare us to take action during the congressional recess that starts on March 27th. Again, I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so happy that you chose to get trained up with the Frontline. We have calls every Wednesday night that alternate between political analysis and skills training. So be sure to join us next week at the same time when we talk about the latest with the Biden administration and how they're treating our migrant community and walking back on deportations. Tonight, we'll focus on how to lobby your member of Congress on how to agree to our united mandate as part of the coalition at the Frontline. Let me talk to you a little bit more about the coalition. The Frontline is the collaboration between the Movement for Black Lives, United We Dream, the Rising Majority, and the Working Families Party. Last spring and summer, we witnessed the largest social movement in U.S. history. We know many of you took to the streets to defend Black lives. We also know many of you worked hard to move the energy into power-building strategies. We will keep building that collective power to fight for a bold and progressive agenda and for the Biden-Harris within the Biden-Harris administration and beyond, We know the work to bring forward a real democracy, racial justice, immigrant justice, and economic system that is not exploitative, and protecting our people and our planet will take all of us working together for the long haul. Many of you have already taken action with the Frontline through the text team, election defenders, joy to the polls, or voter engagement with one of our partner organizations. And I can't say thank you enough. Thank you. If this is your first time joining the Frontline, please don't let it be your last. We stay connected. So take out your phone and text Frontline, one word, to 30403 to join and stay connected with us. We need each and every one of you right now. We all need each other, and the Frontline is the movement. On tonight's call, we're going to be offering you some hands-on training on lobbying. Most of us, when we hear the word lobbying, think of big oil, big tobacco, rich folks, people with power, things that we can't do, or big banks that hire lobbyists to influence politicians so they can write legislation or loosen the rules and regulations to line CEOs' pockets. That's not what we're talking about tonight. We're actually talking about the act of meeting with an elected official to state your view on an issue and try to influence theirs. But the difference between us and those high-paid Washington lobbyists is that we're doing it with and for our people. Our goal for tonight is that you'll leave knowing how to set up a meeting with your Congress member, how to tell your story in a compelling way that speaks not just to your own individual circumstances, but to the impact that issue has on all of us in the community at large. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to LJ, who's going to take a couple minutes to ground us for tonight's call. LJ?
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on the skills call tonight. Sorry about the technical difficulties. One of our great leaders, LJ Amsterdam, and trainers from the Mayday space wasn't able to make it, so I am her substitute. So my name is Reverend Shawna Foster. Again, I'm with the Frontline, and I just want to hold space for us to get us grounded in this moment, especially with all the technical difficulties and the things that you might be doing at home right now, taking care of kids or making dinner, or maybe you're just listening on your earpiece. I just want to ground us in this moment and get us ready for this call. The thing that we are organizing in is unprecedented. For over 100 years, this pandemic, where we have 500,000 deaths in the United States of our family and our friends and members of our beloved community. I want to acknowledge that each one of these lives lost is a tragedy. It's unnecessary. It could have been prevented. The real pandemic that we are facing, in addition to this virus, is the pandemic of racism and the gross incompetence of the previous administration. We know that COVID has hit Black, Brown, and Native communities the hardest, and we will never recover from that loss. Nor will we recover from the loss of those who lost their lives in Texas due to the avoidable power failures while the government and industry stood by. We will pray for the dead and fight for the living. Please join me for a moment of silence in honor and remembrance for each and every life lost and for those that they left behind in grief. Thank you for taking a moment to remember and honor those who have passed. May their memories be a blessing, and may we fight as part of their legacy. I want to turn now to the purpose of tonight's call, which is how to lobby. How can we hold our government accountable to these catastrophic failures, and how can we pass legislation so things like this can never happen again? And one of the best tactics we have for doing this is meeting with our members of Congress and holding them accountable. So the purpose of tonight's call will be on how to do that meeting, which is called lobbying. And I want to introduce my friend Neidi. You saw her earlier doing the interpretation. She has a great story of when lobbying worked really well. Are you ready, Neidi?
Everyone, thank you so much, Shawna. And yes, let's get to this. So the first thing, I just really am excited to be here because I get to tell you about, the time when 4 badass women of color met with President Obama's top staffers and legal counsel in late May of 2012. That was just a few weeks before we won DACA. So this is the story, one little bit of that story. The four of us, Erika Andiola, Lorela Praeli, Gabi Pacheco, and myself, were all undocumented still during that time. And we were not allowed to meet inside the White House with these folks because we wouldn't have passed the background check to be able to be literally inside the White House. So for this meeting, we had to meet next to the Lafayette Park inside a row home in DC. We had already prepared for that meeting. And so we had agreed before that meeting of who was going to take on what role, who was going to lead in what piece of the conversation. And we had kind of figured out our own agenda. We didn't really leave it up to them to drive the conversation. We really wanted for ourselves to drive it. So all of us played a unique role as we divided up our speaking roles and make sure that our strategic points were being told by the right person in that conversation. And that was all by design. So Erika spoke first, and she talked about what was happening during that time in Arizona, her hometown, what was happening with SB 1070 and all the anti-immigrant bills that were happening across the country, and definitely the anti-immigrant sentiment that our families were feeling at the border states. Lorela spoke about, Lorela spoke on behalf of United We Dream, and its constituency at that moment. This is 2012. She also spoke about the key legal arguments of why we believe President Obama had full authority to grant deferred action to young immigrants via executive order. And at the same time, she delivered a letter that we had been working on for a few weeks at that time of hundreds of law professors from all over the country, from the top Ivy League schools, the same schools and the same professors that many of those same staffers and lawyers had attended and learned from. Their professors 100% agreed with us that President Obama had full authority to do this. And so we delivered that letter right there and then. Then Gabi spoke, and Gabi spoke about bipartisan support to provide relief to undocumented youth, and also let them know that we had let La Opinión know, the largest Spanish-speaking newspaper in the US, that we were having that meeting during that time. For us, that was really important because we didn't want this meeting to kind of never go on record as if it never happened, and for our community to know what we were doing there. And my role was to deliver the clear demand with a deadline and clearly state what we were prepared to do if our demand was not met. So we were in a moment of a movement compression. There was clear momentum for the president to move forward with doing DACA through executive order, and my job was to let them know that we had no choice but to continue to move towards the right thing to do. So I told them that they had 2 weeks to make the announcement public, and if not, our movement was ready to take our demands and fight directly with the Obama for America offices. And so we let them know that we were prepared to do sit-ins in those offices in key swing states where the president himself needed to have our communities turn out for his reelection in 2012, which, by the way, we won, proving to many DC operatives that would go for months after that, sabotaging our movement and personally attacking many of us for endangering his reelection. We won, and we proved them wrong that by doing the right thing, we made sure he was going to get reelected in 2012. And then later that year, many of us, like I just shared, knocked on the doors, held town halls, talked to many people across the country, and we made sure that President Obama was reelected in 2012. We did our part. I really hope that this story helps many of you thinking about advocating and lobbying congressional reps or the White House or any other agency to deliver for our communities for things that we already know we deserve, and to really think about what these actions should look like strategically, could look like, and how impactful they could be, and how important it is to think about that timing, sequencing, and escalation. So I hope this helps. Let's get back to Shawna or LJ or the crew there. And thank you all for having me here.
Much, Neidi. It's so great to have such a powerful story. And this is why we want you to learn how to do this tactic, because you could change this entire nation by meeting with your representatives, talking about your community, making clear your ask and what the consequences are. And that's what we're going to be talking about on the call tonight. If you just joined us, my name is Reverend Shawna Foster, and I'm filling in for LJ Amsterdam of the Mayday space to talk about the frontline strategy of the congressional recess and our tactic of using lobbying. Now, Neidi's example is really great of a modern day example of why lobbying works, but we wanted to talk to you a little bit about why we are doing this now. It's because it's the first 100 days of an administration. The first 100 days of the presidential administration has become a hallmark symbol of what defines that administration. Franklin Roosevelt coined the term first 100 days when he came to office in 1932. He moved forward with unprecedented speed to address the Great Depression, and within a few months, he had pushed Congress to rapidly pass a series of 15 major bills. This not only set the New Deal into motion immediately, but affirmed to the American people that what they were experiencing was dire, and they deserved somebody who was going to act quickly and decisively. So since then, the first 100 days has become a symbol of a new administration's identity. The issues tackled during the first 100 days reveals what a president's priorities are, which will likely become the keystone issues for the Biden-Harris administration. What happens now, what we push for now, is going to set the tone for the next 4 years. And this is why it's essential for you to meet with your members of Congress to set the tone. If we want housing, if we want COVID relief, if we want climate justice, if we want to address the tragedy in Texas and the white supremacy in politics, we need to push for that now. We're not going to go and accept Biden as some sort of hallmark of being returning to normal. We're going to advance our community-centered platform for care, relief, and justice. So that's why the Frontline is advancing a big mobilization around congressional recess at the end of March and early April. Congress is not going to be back in session. That means that your elected officials are going to be back in your community. Folks across the country will be sitting down with their legislators to advocate for our united mandate. And we have done so much hard work over the past year. It's critical we don't let up until our communities have gotten the care that they need to strive. So I'm going to, if this already sounds like a good idea to you, like you're like, yes, definitely, I need to help push for a united mandate for all the progressive things that we have been fighting for. We fought hard for this election, and we need to capitalize on these wins now. If you already know that you are going to join us with the Frontline to do this over the congressional recess, which starts around March 27th, when your representatives are in your district, then you can sign up. You can go to frontline.fyi/action. Don't worry if you have never sat down with a member of Congress before, that's all right. We've got a team of coaches who are willing to take you through this step by step, in addition to the training tonight. Once you sign up, a coach is going to get back to you within a couple of weeks to discuss who you're going to meet with, why we're meeting with them, what we want to persuade them to do, how we can hold them accountable, and the best tactics to get them to pass care and relief for our communities. And if you're a very experienced action coach, you've done direct actions and lobbying millions of times, you know the political system, we need you too. You can sign up to volunteer to be a coach, to be able to help people who have never done this before. So the congressional recess is coming up, and we want people to meet with them and do lobbying. And we want to talk about what it means to be in the lobbying meeting. So we are going to have people meet with members of Congress. So we want you to meet with your member of Congress who are already friendly to our platform or neutral to it. We're not asking you to go have sit downs with congressional leaders who are explicitly opposed to our platform, who are mainstreaming white supremacy or conspiracy theories. We got a plan for those folks that we'll share on our next call, our Skillshare call, which is going to be on March 10th, which is more of a direct action, bird dogging, escalation tactics. But first, we want to talk about this training tonight, acknowledging the electeds who are working to actually represent us. We want to secure our allies in Congress and push people who might be friendly to us but haven't quite committed to get them on our side, to commit to the changes that we need. And every good organizer knows that you have to have an ask. So we're building power over here. You don't go to a meeting with someone who holds power without asking for something. And what's the point of reaching out to Congress members who already agree with us? And what's the goal of these meetings? Well, you're going to be meeting with somebody who is aligned with our platform. The goal of the meeting might even be to thank them for what they've done and to remind them that we're watching what they're doing and are counting on their support going forward. Thanking them for what they're going to do for our community is crucial. Getting to know your representative is not quite the goal because politicians are practiced at doing the meet and greet and making you feel good. We want you to go in with a purpose to get them to commit to our united mandates for care and relief. But we'll come back to exactly how the lobbying meeting is going to go with our great instructor, Pamela Campos Palma, in just a minute. But first, one of the best ways to be able to do the lobbying meeting is to tell your story that your representative is supposed to care about because you're their constituent. And so I'm happy to have Nina Sophia Smith from the Frontline, who is going to have us go through how you do your story of self. Nina?
Hello there. My name is Nina Smith. I use she, her pronouns, and I am so thrilled and humbled to be with you tonight. I hope in this short time I have with you to provide some tips and tricks for sharing your story with elected officials when you secure your meeting. Next slide. So you want to think some perspective on the story of self and some history. Marshall Gantz, the Harvard professor and social activist, talks about the power of story to motivate action. He tells us, with lots of experience to back it up, that you will pay more attention to this part of what I'm saying because of the connection I make with you through my story. He talks about the 3 types of stories we tell to move others to action. The first is the story of self. The second is the story of us. And the third is the story of now. So you have your meeting with your rep. There's several questions that you want to ask yourself to prepare for this meeting. And as you heard in Neidi go through a little bit earlier, everybody in that meeting had a specific purpose, a specific ask and role in the conversation. So who speaks during the meeting matters. And elected officials will pay attention to the folks who are elected, who elected them to serve. You can make a deeper connection with your representative by finding common ground through your experiences. So as you're preparing to share your story, you want to think about who the messenger is, right? Is it someone from the district? Ideally, all of you are from the district if you're talking to this representative, but if you're accompanying a friend, you want to make sure that the friend is the one speaking. Is there some sort of identity link? Are you both mothers, right? Is your representative a female identifying person? Are you both vets? Are you both lawyers? That sort of connection and lifting that up can really help you in your conversation and can really, again, ground them and move them to your side. The next thing you want to think about is moving on to some of the logistical considerations. So you want to think about when is the meeting happening? How long you have to speak? Where is it happening? Is it happening over Zoom or are you visiting the Congressional office? Who's coming with me? And who am I meeting in the office? All of these things are going to play a role to some degree in how you approach the situation. And again, you heard in Neidi's story, just how, in terms of how she described the setting where they were and how that kind of demonstrated the impact of the ask that they were making. So, okay, so now that you have that background, and taking myself, for instance, I live in LA and I, my congressional representative is Jimmy Gomez. So I am thinking about the message I would want to deliver when I sit in front of my congressman. So some of the things that I try to think about in addition to those logistical questions is, what am I actually going to say when I get in there? Because I mean, admittedly, it can be nerve-wracking to speak up in this way, especially if it's your first time. So writing it out usually helps. So you want to think about, of course, you'll share your name and where you live in the district. And I think, again, that makes that critical link for your congressperson or your representative that, you were elected to serve our interests. You want to also think about why the issue matters to you. And that emotional connection will really help grab the congressperson's attention and ground them in the moment with you. You want to think about why you are here, what brought you and caused you to take time out of your day and come into their office to talk about this issue. It really matters to you. And so you want to talk about why. You also want to think about the solution you're proposing for us, and you're here with us in community. And so you want to think about that agenda, right? And bringing that into the conversation and ensuring that they understand what that means and what you're asking for. And then the action. What do you want these elected officials to do, right, to make the solution a reality? And those pieces help me put together a tight story that I can tell to a congressperson, and they won't tune out or maybe think about other things. But I have your attention. I've stated why I'm there, and I've stated what I want you to do. A lot of elected officials appreciate that. Okay, so that was a lot, right? But I'll use, again, myself as an example so that you can kind of make this a little bit more real. Okay, so my name is Nina Smith. In terms of introduction, I live in South Westmoreland Avenue in Koreatown. And I'm here because I want our elected officials to do more to protect the vulnerable while we fight the COVID pandemic. There's so many hardworking people in our district, and I fear they aren't getting what they need to survive it. As your constituent, I have to tell you that we are struggling, but the struggle isn't new. It is systemic. We are unhoused, we are over-surveilled, and we do not have what we need to keep our communities safe and healthy. So that is why it's so critical that as we recover, we also address the deeper challenges that got us here in the first place. It means stronger protections for renters, moving funds from bloated police budgets into community resources like housing, paid leave, and public education, and protecting our right to vote. We hope you will vote to ensure that all these priorities not only make it into the recovery package, but does so in a way that centers our most vulnerable neighbors to finally address what has gone on for too long in our communities. So now that you have that story of self and that structure, hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared going into your meeting. Now that you know how to share your story, I'm going to turn this training over to Pam, who is going to talk about how to actually get the meeting and what the strategy is to move your electeds over to your agenda. Ready, Pam?
Yes. Hola todos. Hi, everyone. I am honored to be with you all tonight, especially in this historic moment. Also, the Frontline team is one of the most badass teams, and I'm just honored they asked me to be here. My first time I had a lobbying meeting with an elected leader was 9 years ago. I was thinking about this, and I so wish I had this training then. I was nervous. I wasn't sure of the protocols, but I fundamentally knew one thing. I belonged there. I belonged in those offices because we are the ones that we've been waiting for. Those offices are our offices, right? So if you remember anything, it's that we belong there. We have a duty to be there. I also very quickly learned, very important, do not overlook staffers. This is something that a lot of folks do. And while you want to meet with your member of Congress, it's very important to not forget that staffers in those offices are the ones that make things happen and make things turn. They are themselves key people to respect. And so I want you to remember these two things. It's our duty. We belong in these meetings. We are powerful to be in these meetings. And tip number one, do not take legislative staff or front office workers for granted. And another tip I'll say up front is that often people think that when we're meeting with these folks, automatically I'm talking to them. I'm just there to get my message across, and it's a one-way, I'm there to talk to them. But a really key thing to these meetings is to listen deeply and get information. Your group, you being there, is a great opportunity to better understand the strategy of the office and the rationale, so that you can continue to organize. And so as we go through this section, remember this, listen, get information. So how do you get a meeting with your elected member of Congress? So all your members of Congress's contact information is publicly online. But a key thing is when you look them up online, find their in-district scheduler information or their number to call or email. There's no shame in just calling several numbers and even asking, can I get the scheduler's number? Preferably, you want to call and talk to a live person to set up and schedule your meeting. That's preferable than shooting an email off and hoping that someone gets back to you. So when you call, it's very, very important that you identify yourself as a constituent, because constituents have priority. And so you want to meet with your Congress member. To keep it 100, this is not a tall ask, right? To meet with your Congress member, that's what they're elected to do. And so this may sound obvious, but the office may try to get you to meet with an aide to protect the Congress member's time. And you should push to meet with your elected official. The best and most effective way to do this is to be specific about who you are, right? So that you're a constituent, your group, and why you want to meet, whether that's defunding the police with the Breathe Act, creating green jobs for our people with the Thrive agenda, and to make sure that they know we want to meet now, right? Not months from now. And so, I'm just going to pretend that I'm doing this myself. So I call them and I say, hi, my name is Campos Palma. I am a constituent of Representative Ceres district here in New Jersey 8. I'm also a military veteran. Given the dangerous white nationalist violence we've witnessed against our elections, I and fellow community members need to meet with the congressman to discuss passing critical democracy reform with H.R. 1. I would like to schedule a meeting. When is the next available time the congressman can meet with us in person? And so as a second best option, right? If there's just no way that you can meet with your Congress member, I think we're on next. If you can't, if they're just like, there's no way you can meet with the congressperson, they're just really not available, the second best option is to meet with the aide that works on your issue. This is very important. So for example, if you and your group are pushing for rent relief, you want to meet with the aide that works on housing and advises the Congress member on housing issues, right? And so lots of elected officials, this is very key, lots of elected officials have a community engagement staffer. And a community engagement aide or staffer is someone whose job it is to meet with people like you, concerned constituents. And oftentimes this person is very polished in listening to you and telling you, we'll bring this back, thank you so much. You don't want to meet with this person because this person is necessarily not the person you need to meet with, right? Meeting with an aide is very strategic. It's almost, meeting with the right aide is strategic, almost as much so as meeting with the official themselves if you diligently ask for the right staffer, right? And so let's be clear. We are not doing this for practice. We are not doing this to signal, right? We want to be as effective as possible in this historic moment to pass legislative changes and get relief moved. And so sometimes the elected office may not have an aide on your issue. They might say, we don't have someone that covers that issue. Ask them questions. Say, well, what are other areas? So you should think about other areas that intersect with your priority and ask them, what are the menu of options then of who can actually meet and who does this day to day, day in and day out, and meet with that staffer and that aide. Most importantly, this isn't a one and done either, right? You want to develop a relationship with this staff worker who's actually advising, and in many times they're writing the policy for your elected. And so think about it as relationship building. Because of COVID, electeds may not be holding in-person meetings in their office like they normally would, and so you should be prepared to ask about alternatives, right? So ask questions. How are their offices setting up their meetings? A big part of meeting with electeds is preparing for the meetings so that you are confident and successful, right? So preparation and asking questions. So asking things like, what kind of meeting will it be? In what format? What can I expect? Is it a small roundtable with other leaders in the community, right? Or is it going to be an intimate meeting with just us and the aide? Is it at a Zoom on a scheduled time, right? That you need to like make sure you make a reminder for yourself. Ask clarity, and really importantly, be on time, be prepared. And so again, I said it and I'll say it a million times, preparation is key to being successful. Do some research on who you're meeting with, right? I like to ask, can you say their name again? Can you even spell it out? And I'll do some research on who that person is to understand where they might be coming from, like Nina said, so I can connect with them, right? And so think about what you're trying to bring to the meeting as well to show your power as well as your story itself, right? That it's not just you. So many of us are suffering from these ailments and these injustices. And so bring a petition, pictures of people, materials that you want to leave with their office. It's always great that you say, here is a very simple sheet that we put together. So with our points, right? Notes for you in your office. It shows a real seriousness and it shows that you are powerful. And so if you go with a small group, this is another very key thing. Be super clear and prepare before who is leading the meeting and have a plan about how folks in your group are going to participate. The worst thing is to have it be confusing and awkward because people are talking over each other and you're stepping on each other, right? So have cohesion, organize beforehand. A group of people is key also to show that you're not alone, and to also importantly have extra ears, right, for listening, and extra eyes. I love to assign one person in the group to be the note taker, right? So that we show also that we're listening to them. I sometimes have that person sit right in front of the staffer and take all the notes, right? So they know that we mean business and that we are taking this seriously as well. And also, you want to debrief the meeting with your group, right? And so those notes help there too. And just so you know, the amazing Frontline team has coaches that can help you with this if you choose to lead your meeting. And so next is the meeting. We're on the same slide. Be punctual. And even if your representative is Ted Cruz, right? Even if your representative is Ted Cruz, it is important to seek to build rapport, right? And so what this means is that I don't come out blazing hot and hostile because Ted Cruz is the worst, as we know. I am gracious with the staffer, right? I am confident, I am charismatic, I am there with a purpose, right? I am not going to be shaken because of all of that. I'm there on a mission. And so the most important goals of your meeting, as Nina laid out, make a personal connection using your story in a powerful way that gets the legislator to hear you, right? And that gets them to see your community and the direct impacts that you're experiencing. Second, ask questions, get intel. What are their thoughts on this? Where do they stand? What blocks or barriers do they see in order to getting this passed? Even if somebody tells me, yes, I'm totally with you, great, I always ask, what other colleagues, what other folks do we need to have on our side? Who needs encouragement? And get that intel from them, right? These are their coworkers. And then the final goal, Shawna said this, make an explicit ask. And so again, we didn't just come here to talk, we came here to make an ask on behalf of our communities. And next, I'm going to go over a tool that can help you gauge how to move your decision maker. It's called the Spectrum of Allies. So this is the Spectrum of Allies. It's a tool that helps us, an organizing tool that helps us understand support and opposition. So active allies, you see them all the way on the left side. Active allies are people who agree with you. They are fighting alongside you actively. They are champions. Passive allies, the slice next to that, are people who agree with you, but they're not doing anything about it yet. They haven't really, they agree with you kind of like in private, right? Neutrals are the folks in the middle slice, are not actually they're not really engaged and they're uninformed, right? And so oftentimes the neutral folks, they're going to get pulled. They're going to do whoever's the loudest around them. And then passive opposition, the next slice, are people who disagree with you, but they're not actively trying to stop you or organize against you, or they don't have funding against our issues. So they oppose us, but they're not really doing much about it. And then active opposition are people that not only disagree with us, but they're actively organizing against us, or they're trying to undermine our message. And so as part of your preparation for your meeting, the reason this tool is so important is you want to use this tool to start assessing where your Congress member or this legislative office, where are they on this spectrum, right? Are they actively opposing you and very loud about it and public about it? Are they passive? Have your group have this understanding before you step into that meeting. It's also important because when you need to know how to move them, and most important of all, the Spectrum of Allies allows us to see what is realistic, right? Moving someone from active opposition all the way to active support, if you only have a 1-hour meeting, is not realistic. So if your Congress member or aide is neutral, your goal is to compel them to support, right? If they're in that middle slice, you want to move them to support. So you can say, our community is suffering. What are your concrete reasons for refusing to deliver for the communities you are supposed to represent, right? If they are passive supporters, you want to make them active public champions of our cause. So something I would say is, we expect to be challenged on this in our own party or in our own state. We need you to be a champion out in front with us in this dire moment. We know we can win together, right? Compel them to stand with us in public actively. And while we don't expect this, if they are hostile and oppositional, it's always good to be prepared, right? Acting humble and curious goes a long way, right? Honey more than vinegar, I think is the saying. Because again, you want to listen to what their reasons are, and really asking questions, right? So something I might say to someone who's hostile and oppositional to our group is, well, you mentioned most Texans don't want thousands of green jobs created. Given the clear economic and climate crises our communities are experiencing, what makes you say this? What backup do you have to say this, right? Have them explain themselves to you. Another thing I might say is, you keep citing certain constituents who agree with you, but I took time away from my family and my work to meet with you. Do you not feel that you represent my family and our community as well, right? The Spectrum of Allies, again, reminds us it is not realistic to move someone more than maybe 2 or 3 slices on this chart. However, do not forget, it is very important that we also move active opposition to neutral, right? Or at least slow them down, interrupt their logic. So we might say that we at the Frontline, we don't expect that you'll encounter this in your lobbying meetings. We do ask you to be ready. It could be that your representative has met with another constituency group that has convinced them to be hostile on this issue. So just in case, be prepared. Something that I often say, and Neidi kind of pointed this in her example, is you can just say out front, we can see that we are not going to change your mind today. But we will say that going directly against our community in this greatest time of need will not serve any of us. And in fact, your actions will only activate more members of the community to speak out in this historic moment, right? That makes them question if they're on the right side of history or freedom. So the next slide, sometimes folks are, we have memories of this guy. Sometimes folks are really skilled at making you think that you had a great meeting, but actually nothing was promised, nothing was really heard, right? Don't let them give you non-answers. Don't let them give you circular, weaselly talk like this guy, right, around your ask. Ask them for a clear yes or no firm commitment to your agenda. And so if they do some of this kind of dancing, weaseling, we like to say, be unafraid to stand your ground and say out loud, I don't really hear an answer here, right? Be empowered to even repeat your ask. So I would say, with respect, Congresswoman, I don't hear a clear answer from you on this key economic issue that our working families count on you for. Will you tell us right now that you will affirmatively be voting for the People's Act to make sure that we have structural democracy reform? Yes or no? And be comfortable with silence, even in that office. It's on them to answer you. Get a direct answer to your ask. And if they say, well, we'll get back to you, we'll look into this, ask them when that will be, right? Representative so-and-so, we need to know with certainty that you're on the side of working families in a time when we need you most. When exactly are you going to get back to us, given that this vote is coming up soon, right? And ask them for a real date and let them know you will also be following up, right? So overall, I would say nobody wants an agitational meeting. If you show up as a team, come prepared, practice your story of self. You know, we at the Frontline practice grounding because it reminds us of our purpose and our values, right? And be well organized, because you would be surprised at how you can actually get a hard commitment and key information from your Congress member or aide that actually delivers for our people. And if that happens, be sure to thank them, right? This is not easy work. They probably meet with so many different people. So thank them. You know, optionally, you can ask to take a picture or a screenshot of your Zoom to show, you know, say, I want to show the rest of our community that you stand with us, and be proud of that. And you can also say, I like to say, we look forward to working with you. We look forward to holding you accountable in community, right? In principled struggle. And so lastly, follow up, follow up, follow up. We know that's a key tenet to organizing. Follow up is important. And so work with your coach or your team to determine how will you follow up with the rep after the meeting. Make sure that they follow through with what you're asking. And I hope that this part of the training has been helpful to you. I'm glad to share in this knowledge. We're about to be done, and I'm about to pass it over to the amazing Tiffany Flowers, the fearless leader of the Frontline.
Wow, thank you so much, Pam. That was so helpful and so fantastic. Thank you, LJ. Thank you, Shawna. Thank you, Neidi. What a fantastic training, really. We reviewed how to get a meeting, what to say, how to share your story of self, how to move your representative to guarantee our community's care and relief, and how to follow up with them, right? Thank you so much for sharing your successes. Neidi, thank you. Nina, thanks for telling us how to share our story of self. Seriously, thank you. Shawna, thank you for stepping in for LJ. LJ, thanks for trying through your technical difficulties. And thank you, Pam, for telling us the best ways to actually get through a successful meeting. We really do hope that you found this training to be useful and a tool to put to use when you move forward and schedule your meetings with your representatives. We hope that you found we hope that the representatives are going to listen and take in that everything you have, you'll be able to take with you and move to action for the things that our community needs. If this training has inspired you to host or to lead an event, Please, please sign up now. We need our powerful communities to show up and to hold our legislators accountable for care and for relief. Again, sign up if you're available to lead an action or a lobbying sit down. Sign up if you're available to coach. There's a role for each and every one of us in this moment and in this movement. The recess will take place March 27th to April 11th. If you didn't remember that from earlier, again, it's March 27th through April 11th. It's our moment right now to joyfully harness our wins to ensure our communities are safe and cared for. We need your leadership and help. We all need each other. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. We all have a space and we all need each other's leadership and help. Don't worry if you haven't done anything before. Don't worry if you feel a little rusty. Don't worry if you don't know who you'll be going with or who you'll be coached by or coaching, because we can get this done together. Our coaches are here, the staff is here, and we're all ready to help. So thanks so much again for being with us tonight. We are a powerful movement that's won so much already, and we have so much more to win for our folks. So let's keep going. See you next week when we talk about protecting immigrant rights and stopping deportations. Thank you again. See you next week.